It's part of our everyday routine.
I can recycle this.
Washing out plastic bottles, scraping off pizza boxes. Recycling. Doing our bit to keep climate change at bay.
Warning, polluter, polluter.
New Zealanders place recycling at the top of the list of the best ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, followed by switching to renewable electricity, growing your own food, less packaging, and buying less. All great stuff, but not actually as impactful as we think.
No, recycling's sadly not as effective as we think it is. And we don't say stop recycling, but there are more things that you can do.
Here are the top 5 ways to reduce emissions. Going car-free, switching to an electric vehicle, taking fewer aeroplanes, renewable electricity, and switching to public transport. Recycling? That actually comes in at number 60 on the list. Even going full vegan is at number 7.
Giving up your car, getting on a bus, industry has a huge role to play in cutting climate emissions. So anything where we're sort of going direct to the source of the energy use is really much more impactful for combating climate change.
Of course, getting recycling right is important, just not for climate change really. So how do we get that so wrong?
Don't be ashamed, Lana, I got it wrong too. Luckily, Bronwyn Hayward is here to help. She's a political scientist and a lead researcher on a UN special report on climate. So, Bronwyn, what even is recycling good for if it's so far down that climate combat list?
Well, I think one of the things that's great about recycling, that says a lot about New Zealanders, is that we're not really big consumers. Like if we can put something on Trade Me, if we can pass it on, we do. And actually, overall, reducing our consumption is a good thing. It's just that what we need to think about is what are the big things that make a difference to the climate specifically.
Okay, but I think I'm one of the many New Zealanders that sort of thought that recycling was way up the top of the list, and then to find out that it's down at number 60, how did we get that so wrong?
Well, this poll has been showing for a couple of years, well, 4 or 5 years actually, that New Zealanders are quite confused about what we should do about climate. And that's understandable because we're a bit of an unusual country in that the things that really make a difference here are things that are quite difficult for individuals to tackle on their own. So the 2 big things are how we use land for agriculture. So our agriculture is half of our emissions. And the other problem is how we get around, our transport. But having said that, we can still do a lot as individuals and collectively with our cities and our government to make a difference on those things.
Bronwyn, might this all be a bit of a distraction, focusing on what individuals are doing? Shouldn't we instead be focusing on the big emitters, those fossil fuel companies, and the people who can really make a difference?
A bit of both, actually, because individuals, we need people who care and really press governments and press businesses to make a difference.
So, Bronwyn, I think you nailed it before when you said that Kiwis, we're a bit confused about what's good and what's bad. So just to be clear, recycling is better than not recycling, right?
Recycling is great because reducing our consumption is a really good thing. But overall, if we're looking at reducing emissions, changing our transport twice a week, swapping out the car for the bus, walking, sharing a car ride, that's a great thing to do. And talking about our dairy and our meat consumption and actually supporting farmers who are going for low emissions, that's a really important thing we can do.
Sounds like your recycling, you're talking about reusing things that we have no longer got any use for. What about those of us who are breaking down cardboard boxes, plastic bottles, all of that, putting it in a giant bin? Is that of any use?
It's still a good thing to do. It's not just climate that we're facing an enormous problem with plastic, we're facing an enormous problem with biodiversity loss. So if we're talking just about climate, transport and land use for agriculture are our big issues. But if we're talking about all the other environmental issues, then yes, recycle as well, it's a good thing to do.
Bronwyn Hayward, thanks for speaking to us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Well, kia ora, welcome to the Project on Monday night. Look, Justine Smith's here. Justine, who I hope will continue recycling despite that story.
I'm going to continue recycling, and also I really like the idea of taking the pressure off and going, it's just a couple of days, do something different. So I drive my big car here from West Auckland when I work on the project, and I'm going to make a pledge that next summer, when it's a bit safer and light and it's not raining, I'm going to bring my electric bike all the way from deep West Auckland into town.
Right.
Yeah.
We've done it. We've solved climate change.
Solved it.
And if you can't be bothered to do that, you could just pick me up on the way, babes, because that's one of the things that she said, sharing
That's
your car.
probably what will be more likely.
Yeah.
I think, and the point is, I think, like Bronwyn said, we need people who care. So by recycling, you are saying, I recognise that my actions impact the world, and if you do that with recycling and you do it with transport, you do it with pest trapping or weed control, whatever you do, it's actually a change of behaviour that we need at a global level to make any sort of difference, so stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, next time I'm flying to Sydney, I won't take the plane, I'll swim.
Oh, that'd be good, Jeremy.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Well, actually,
Used to be of a swimmer.
a lot of people don't realise Corby actually used to be a professional swimmer. He very rarely talks about it.
Never professional.
Oh, God.
No one is a
Any
professional
time he
swimmer.
can.
No one gets paid for swimming.